In the Fallout universe, Vault-Tec's intentions were never to actually save humanity. At least not in the way the majority of the population believed. Before the bombs fell in 2077, Vault-Tec promised safety, specifically in underground shelters designed to preserve civilization until the surface became livable again. Families signed up believing they were securing a future for their children. They imagined communities protected from nuclear fire, guided by science, order, and hope. But when the doors closed and the outside world burned, the truth began to reveal itself. Many vaults were never built for survival at all. They were experiments and carefully designed social tests conducted on unsuspecting populations. Some vaults studied isolation, overcrowding, psychological manipulation, authoritarian control, and the limits of human endurance. Entire populations became data points in experiments they never agreed to join. So the question isn't whether Vault-Tec saved humanity, no. The real question is, who was Vault-Tec truly meant to benefit? In this video, I'm going to deep dive into Vault-Tec's history as well as some of the major vaults and how they would shape the Fallout world as we know it. And without further ado, let's talk vaults. So, Vault-Tec, or Vault-Tec Incorporated, is a pre-war defense company. The fears of nuclear war started all the way back in 2031. That was the same year Vault-Tec acquired Morgantown's local college and completely rebranded it as Vault-Tec University. In fact, the majority of their high-level scientists actually taught or graduated from there. Now, in 2052, which we covered in my previous video, the heightened state of the resource war made everyone panic. This is when Vault-Tec really shined. So much so, Vault-Tec eventually became the most valuable company in the world and being worth roughly $1 trillion. Anywho, the new plague is essentially what started Vault-Tec's Project Safehouse in 2054. This project, or at least according to the public, was seen as an initiative that would help save humanity in the event of nuclear detonation. Vault-Tec then unveiled their demonstration vault, which was near their headquarters, and it shot their popularity even more so. Vault-Tec earned so much money so fast, they were eventually able to build their headquarters in Washington, D.C. Now, the U.S. government helped finance these projects using junk bonds. However, they were only able to build a whopping 122 shelters, meaning literally less than 0.1% of the population would actually be safe and secure if something were to happen. This is due to how expensive these things cost to build and operate. For example, Vault 13 had a budget of $400 billion, but ended up costing $645 billion by the end of the project. That's quite a lot of money, and that's just one vault. Fallout Wiki describes the cost of these vaults skyrocketing due to the project being completely classified under the new amended Espionage Act. Now, with all this privacy, shady stuff began happening even before the experiments were implemented. Due to its secrecy, it allowed for basically complete mismanagement, which allowed embezzlement and many other things to occur. However, what can be said though, through all the bullshit Vault-Tec was dealing with, they legit made vaults that actually physically protected people. The people just weren't protected from Vault-Tec. Despite Vault-Tec being legitimately evil, it did come with some fantastic technological breakthroughs. This included breakthroughs in the construction industry. They were able to pump out vaults in record time. Still over budget, but in record time nonetheless. Most of the vaults were done and actually operational by 2063. Vault-Tec also did a lot of partnering with other corporations, including Robco, which helped in creating the personal information processors for their vault dwellers. This, of course, would be later known as the Pip-Boy. Now, over the course of the Sino-American War, Vault-Tec had finally reached the status as the biggest company in the United States. Being the biggest company in corporate America comes with some benefits, in case you didn't know. One of those benefits is having your high-ranking executives taking steps to ensure the resource wars continue. After all, they built all these vaults. They want to freaking use them. One example is them acquiring Cold Fusion from Lee Moldaver. This, however, is just the beginning of Vault-Tec doing some extremely sketchy things, which we'll cover next. Now we're going to dive into what Vault-Tec really wanted to accomplish. We're going to talk about the Societal Preservation Program. This program was headed by Dr. Stanislaus Braun. This was the program Vault-Tec implemented to take things to the absolute extreme. The goal of these experiments was to test the survivability and durability of the human body and mind. Basically, they wanted humans that were most fit to survive. There were only 17 control vaults that did absolutely nothing evil or messed up to their citizens. Literally every other vault had something weird going on. And the people backing these programs, they were literally cold-blooded in their thought process. The whole goal was to acquire data to be used to find the perfect controllable society for when the radiation dispersed. They didn't see the lives inside the vaults as actual lives. They thought a death of a vault dweller was nothing more than a data point to be used later on. They literally considered ethical concerns as counterproductive. Kind of scary. Every single vault experiment we hear of is either thought of directly by Stanislaus Braun or proposed by other Vault-Tec executives like Hugo Stolz or Bud Askins. So that quickly sums up the history of Vault-Tec, and what I'd like to do now is go over some of the worst vault experiments that we know of so far. I'm really hoping the future game and series dive into these even more and come up with some absolutely crazy stuff. Regardless, we're going to talk about the vault's history and the experiments that's taken place. To start things off, we got Vault 11. Now, Vault 11 is pretty messed up. The vault was a part of 6 vaults stretched across the Mojave. What's dark about this vault is the fact that once those doors sealed, the vault's computers instructed all vault dwellers they must vote and kill one vault dweller a year. If the dwellers failed to vote and kill one person, the entire vault populace would be killed. However, this turned out to be all fake because if the vault dwellers decided to ignore the commands of the computer, they would be praised for their commitment to human life, and the overseer would actually unlock the vault doors, allowing the vault dwellers to come and go with permission. Now, the terminal entries in 2281 show that the original vault dwellers didn't quite figure this out right away, unfortunately. That's right, they all believed they were actually supposed to kill a vault dweller once a year, or else they would all be killed. So the vault dwellers came to the conclusion to democratically elect the one to be killed. The chosen individual was actually elected as overseer, and at the end of the year, they were to enter the room to be executed. I guess they get a bit of dignity being the overseer for a year before being executed. And in all actuality, the very first overseer of the vault was the first one to be executed. Even that overseer never knew the vault's plans, and the residents resented him for it. So the plan to elect an overseer every year and then execute them went on for 16 total years. That's 16 executions. All when they didn't really even need to. In 2093, a bunch of different voting blocks started to emerge within the vault. The Allied Service Workers block, the Divine Will block, Human Dignity block, Justice block, United Vault Technician block, and finally, Utilitarian block. These were essentially voting parties that nominated their own candidates to become overseer. However, it eventually got to the point of Vault 11 having their final overseer. So this whole block party system got crazy after a while. This resulted in a ton of corruption that occurred. Obviously, that's what happens when you have voting parties. The most powerful block in the vault up to this point was the Justice block, which was led by Roy Gottlieb. Well, they decided to sexually coerce a resident named Catherine Stone. They essentially threatened to appoint her husband Nathan to be the next overseer. This was bad news for Catherine, obviously, because that would mean her husband would be executed. So Catherine went out of her way and straight up murdered all of the members of the Justice block in retaliation. Now, this did a couple of things for Catherine. Mainly, it would essentially make sure that she would become the next overseer and end up saving her husband from execution. That's the kind of sacrifice I want in a relationship. She did end up becoming the overseer and enacted Overseer Order 745. This order essentially got rid of the election process, causing future overseers to be elected at random. So, Roy from earlier got pissed at the thought of losing the power over the vault populace. He was so mad He and the remainder of the Justice Bloc created a coup to regain power and re-implement the election system. Well, this whole thing broke out into a massive fight that killed off nearly every member of the Vault. Only 5 Vault dwellers survived. This is where it gets kind of funny and also kind of messed up. The last 5 entered the execution room to tell the computer they would no longer kill anyone. Hoping for a swift execution, the computer delivers its automated message, essentially letting them know they never actually had to kill anyone in the first place. As you might imagine, they were obviously horrified. And to end it all, the 5 survivors walked to the entrance of the vault to prepare for the departure. There's actually documentation of the last 5 talking about committing suicide to make up for the sins of the last 16 years. One of the vault dwellers tried to convince the other 4 to leave the vault. 4 others actually just wanted to die. They were brought to a point of no return, but Dweller 1 was adamant on leaving and telling the world of the horrors of the vault. There's a recording where you hear 4 gunshots, and if you visit the vault in-game, you notice 4 skeletons. No one knows who survived and left the vault, but based off of the timeline of playing the game, they're obviously deceased by now. Well, actually, I don't know. Crazier things have happened. So we started off pretty strong with Vault 11. Now we're going to talk about Vault 108. And this one's actually pretty funny. So Vault 108 was originally constructed in March of 2061. The construction was actually cut short due to a work stoppage and was originally built to hold 475 residents for 38 years. The vault originally had a less aggressive experiment with all vault positions being unfilled and having the overseer fill the slots. All positions except Chief of Staff, which was Zachary K. Jameson, Jarek Maddox as Chief of Security, and Nathan Oregon as the morale officer. However, Vault 108 was designed to have its power supply fail in 20 years. We see a little of this in Fallout Season 2. Anyway, they made their backup supply a mini geothermal power supplier called the Steam Whistle. This thing was not powerful enough to keep the entire vault operational. The scientists, however, knew this. Along with that, the vault was outfitted with an extreme amount of weapons and barely any sources of entertainment. The scientists also made sure to implement an overseer who had cancer. His name was Brody Jones, and he was estimated to survive 3 years after the start of the project. This was all according to plan. And finally, the vault started a cloning facility. There's a holotape in the vault that describes repetitively cloning a single person. This dude's name is Gary, and every time he gets clones, the clones get more and more aggressive. They got to 54 clones, and the staff was trying to figure out where to put all of them. Clone 54 actually managed to injure Dr. Peterson, and they made plans to start executing the clones. But we see in Fallout 3 the Lone Wanderer entering the vaults and only seeing clones of Gary. I think it's safe to say the Gary clones won that war. Alright, this next one is a quickie. Vault 77 was sealed October 23rd, 2077 with just one person inside. This dude originally believed it was a mistake and pleaded for them to let everyone else in, as he was already starting to go crazy. He started to refer to himself as the Puppet Man. On February 4th, 2079, Puppet Man actually ended up finding a crate of puppets and naturally started playing with them. This, however, only drove him deeper into madness because by March 30th, the Vault Boy puppet started talking to him. Or at least the Puppet Man thought this was the case. So there's a puppet called the King Puppet that P-Man, I'm gonna call Puppet Master or Puppet Man P-Man from now on. But anyway, there was a puppet called King Puppet that P-Man ripped apart and then later tried to place the blame on the Vault Boy puppet. Naturally, Vault Boy puppet responded and said it was actually the Puppet Man himself. I know, stick with me, this one is kind of weird. Anywho, Puppet Man started freaking out and ended up leaving the vault, leaving it completely empty. The story is actually featured in a promotional comic strip with the release of Fallout 3. Alright, the last one I'm going to cover in this video is Vault 12. So Vault 12 was built under Bakersfield and was originally meant to be like this badass vault. It literally stated to be built with every amenity in mind for the prospective vault dweller. It was also said to be made with the best of the best water purification systems. What that means is it was able to supply 15,000 gallons of water a day. This vault was so prestigious, people who signed up earned the Pressed Vault Suit Award. Very, very luxurious. However, all that prestigiousness, if that's even a word, ended when the actual purpose was to study the effects of radiation on the vault dwellers. To do this, Vault-Tec intentionally left the vault door unsealed. The day of the Great War, the citizens of Bakersfield flooded the vaults and the vault doors closed. Almost. The residents that survived all of this radiation obviously turned into ghouls, and in 2083, a lot of those ghouls decided to leave. Those that chose to stay, however, founded the city of Necropolis. Around the beginning of 2084, there's a very, very nice man named Set. Anyway, Set seized power over Necropolis, and over the next 23 years ran the city of Necropolis with little to no influence of any outsiders. People that were actually not ghouls thought it wouldn't necessarily be the best place to go and hang out, and naturally the city decided to separate into different groups, like all cities do. A group of ghouls decided that Set is kind of a dick and didn't really want to be a part of all that. Anyway, this group of ghouls decided to move deep underground, and to everyone's surprise actually, Set was totally cool with it. Set even supplied them with water, mainly for strength in numbers in case anybody decided to attack. Set definitely knew he needed some good allies. So that is actually going to be it for this one. I just find the history of Vault-Tec to be incredibly cool, and to really dive into the history of some of these vaults is always fascinating. Now, obviously, I didn't cover every vault in this video. I wanted to save some for later. Comment down below what other vaults you want to learn about, and I'll try to make a video going over them. And as always, if you learned anything or enjoyed anything in this video, please hit that subscribe button, press that notification icon, and until next time, I love you.